Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming, both here in person and online, to our TD Walter Bean public lecture on Africa's Plastic Revolution, Advancing Global Solutions for Healthy Oceans. My name is Besma Wamani. I'm the Associate Vice President for International, and I'm very happy to be your MC today. Allow me first to acknowledge the land that we work on. Our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to 6 nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within our Office of Indigenous Relations. The University of Waterloo is a unique place, and I think many of you know that we stand for many things here, including our important role that we play in working towards truth and reconciliation through the research and learning and teaching community building. And in part of that great tradition that we continue to learn from our Indigenous people is really understanding the importance of caring for the world's oceans, fisheries, and how it affects our economies. And since our founding in 1957, we're still a very young university. The University of Waterloo has sought to uncover solutions to the most pressing, complex challenges facing humanity and our planet. As these challenges evolve, we are evolving too. And I'm very proud to be a part of and to be here in our new thinking of the way the university is going to move forward, called Waterloo at 100, or Global Futures. Please take a look at this. This is something we're very proud of. It speaks to our very important journey to seeing how we can be a more impactful university, both at home and internationally. Significance of healthy oceans on our planet can't be overstated. And the University of Waterloo has numerous researchers across all 6 faculties dedicated to studying and assessing the impact of the next generation of leaders and seeing how we can be more thoughtful in our role and stewardship of this planet. We would not be here tonight if not for the support of our longstanding partner, TD Canada Trust. With more than 2 decades, TD has made a significant investment here at Waterloo to establish the TD Walter Bean Professorship in Environment. This gift has enabled us to invite the very best and brightest minds. I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing you to one of them here to Waterloo to share their knowledge and collaborate with us. TD's investment is building a sustainable future through the Ready Commitment Program is truly a recommendable, or commendable, I should say, project and endeavor, and aligns with the university's Waterloo 100 vision. To this end, allow me to introduce Nupi Zubair, Region Head Branch, Banking Ontario of Southwest, to bring remarks on behalf of TD. Welcome.
So the magic is not tripping while you're walking up, so I'm already a success today. Good evening. My name is Nupi Zubair. I am the region head for what we call Ontario Southwest, which is really our southwestern Ontario footprint of branches, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. To hear this year's Walter Bean professor, Dr. Denis Aheto, and I'm very much looking forward to the lecture. At TD, our purpose is to enrich the lives of our customers, of our colleagues, and of our communities. And today, we are here to talk about communities. The TD Ready Commitment is our global corporate citizenship platform and is one of the ways that we collectively invest towards that purpose, specifically through community investments that open doors to a more inclusive and sustainable tomorrow. Many of us are concerned about the world the next generation will inherit. And that's why one of the areas of focus of the TD Ready Commitment is to help create a more vibrant planet. Climate change is a global issue that will have a growing impact on communities, businesses, and the economy. We have already been experiencing these impacts from extreme weather events such as severe flooding, snowstorms, and record-breaking temperatures. We believe that a healthy environment is the foundation to feel confident about our futures. That's why TD is committed to elevating the quality of the environment so that people and economies can thrive. Since 1994, the TD Walter Bean Professorship and these public lectures provide youth and community members with the ideas, information, and insights they need to tackle complex environmental issues our planet is facing. And information is power. That is why TD is proud to sponsor the Walter Bean Professorship and to welcome Dr. Aheto to be with us today. I look forward to today's lecture and to learning more from Dr. Aheto and each of you and how we can create a more sustainable tomorrow.
Thank you, Nupi, and thank you to you and to all your colleagues at TD for your continued partnership. The TD Walter Bean Professorship in Environment was founded by the late Walter Bean, and since 1994 has promoted hands-on learning with a focus on youth, community, education, and the environment. Today, TD's The Ready Commitment further aligns our mutual goal of building a more inclusive and sustainable future through partnerships, and we're proud to count TD as one of our most important corporate partners and philanthropic supporters. So why are we here today? Well, every year, millions of tons of plastic find their way into our oceans, posing a grave threat to the thriving ecosystems in our oceans and the livelihood of coastal communities who depend on the ocean for shelter, income, and food. This alarming trend calls for urgent action to protect our marine ecosystems and ensure sustainable development for future generations. So allow me to introduce our 2023 TD Walter Bean Professor, Dr. Denis Aheto. Dr. Aheto isn't just a name in the world of coastal resilience and marine conservation. He's also a beacon of inspiration and a powerhouse of knowledge. As a distinguished professor of coastal ecology and interdisciplinary ocean studies, Denis wears many hats, including that of founding director of the Center for Coastal Management, a center of excellence in coastal resilience at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Denis's academic journey is impressive as it is diverse, with a PhD and MSc in environmental sciences and tropical aquatic ecology from the University of Bremen, Germany, and an MSc in Rural Development from the Swedish Agricultural University. His expertise expands over 15 years of scientific project management, overseeing institutional donor-funded projects in marine and coastal and fisheries management at the University of Cape Cod, backed by partners like the World Bank and the USAID. But what sets Denis apart is not just his academic accolades, but also his unwavering commitment to research impact and partnerships globally. His work delves into crucial areas such as marine ecosystem conservation, small-scale fisheries, marine spatial planning, wetlands ecology, and marine conflict issues. His insights are not just confined to academia. He also serves as a technical advisor to the West Africa Coastal Areas Management Program of the World Bank, a role that has earned him several meritorious awards for his invaluable contribution. Denis isn't just a colleague, he's a friend and collaborator to many of the Faculty of Environment's professors that are here with us today as well, and a true force of nature in the world of coastal resilience and marine conservation. Please help me in welcoming Denis.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so good evening to you all. And I want to use this opportunity to welcome you to my presentation this evening. I indeed feel greatly honored and inspired at the same time for this wonderful opportunity to be selected as the 2023 Waterbean Visiting Professor of Environment in this great University of Waterloo. I am indeed pleased to be associated with the Faculty of the Environment, and Besman has mentioned some of the great colleagues you have here, Pratib, Derek, and many others, including Bruce, the Dean of the Faculty of Environment. The Faculty of Environment is a foremost academic faculty in Canada focusing on shaping our sustainable future. For over the past 50 years, the faculty has dedicated itself to having a positive impact locally and globally. Your community of students, faculty, staff, alumni, donors, and industry partners make a meaningful change that happens not just in the classrooms, but also in your offices and the communities around the world together. Here, I want to specifically cite the Vulnerability to Viability project, what we call the V2V project, that is housed within the Faculty of Environment and supported by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, that is working so hard and tirelessly to build resilient coastal communities around the world in over 30 countries, involving over 100 researchers, global researchers and partners, of which I am one of them, providing in-depth scientific and critical knowledge solutions. I wish to therefore express my sincerest gratitude to the Dean of the Environment, Professor Bruce Frayne, for the appointment and for the confidence he has shown in my work in Ghana and on the African continent. I also wish to use this opportunity to thank Pratib and Derek and the organizers, Chen, Marian, and many others, for which time will not permit me to mention their names, for your cooperation and the opportunities. I cannot end this segment without expressing my profound appreciation to the TD Waterbean Foundation for supporting this worthy initiative aimed at building the knowledge and skill base necessary for society, or our societies, to address the complex environmental problems that we face. Distinguished faculties, guest students, media, all protocols observed. So I will be talking on the topic on Africa's plastic revolution, and how we can begin thinking about addressing global solutions in marine litter management. Obviously, there's been quite a lot happening globally in terms of the challenges that we face, not just with marine plastics, but there are also other important challenges that face our marine environment. So I will be touching on these issues, marine litter, and also touch on the issue of plastics in particular. And I know many of you have been thinking about what I mean by plastic revolution, Africa's plastic revolution. I will attempt to give my personal reflections over that philosophy, which I've been thinking about. And then also focus on what I perceive from my experience working on the continent and also working globally, what I perceive we should be looking at as an approach to addressing the marine litter or plastic issue. I'm not by any means suggesting that these suggestions are ultimate solutions, but I'm just putting them across as a way of us reflecting over some of the important issues we may not have been keeping an eye on, and rather focused on really bigger, much more bigger issues. And so I'll be reflecting on those issues and also the contributions of my center in this process. We all do know that even though very useful, marine plastics are manufactured or processed solid materials that are very useful for us in many ways. Marine plastics in particular are used for packaging and also are used for many other relevant domestic, industrial, and also, well, within the homes, we use them residentially, you know, in many things. Globally, the global composition of marine litter from 761 publications across about 5,000 locations around the world has indicated that at least about 60% of all marine litter that we find are plastics. So already that tells us that that is really a big issue to contend with. Then the question then comes, why is it then a problem? It is certainly a problem, as we all do know, because it is a solid material. Oftentimes it's abandoned, they are abandoned, and when they are abandoned, they become persistent in the environment and ultimately ending in the marine environment through river systems, lakes, and other aquatic systems. And the challenge is that they could last in this system well over 500 years. So that in itself is a big issue. So this is just to give you some perspective about researches that have been done across the continent. The figure on the left side just gives you an idea of the total number of studies that have been done as of last year. This I cited in a publication. And you could see that very little work has been done on the continent when it comes to the issues of marine litter. As an academic, I'm very interested to really have a sense of how much work has been done in terms of providing the evidence base to help us address the issue on the continent. My philosophical basis, my philosophical reflections about Africa's plastic revolution is the fact that the impacts of plastics on Africa's oceans have gone unnoticed due to many, many significant and competing national priorities, such as addressing issues of poverty, energy, climate change, forest degradation, through logging activities, health, education, among others. So the issue of plastics does not come to the table when it comes to what the continent needs to prioritize. Issues of the environment, particularly the oceans, have been neglected or given very little attention, largely because the ocean challenges, then again, are very complex and multifaceted. You agree with me that the ocean issues are things that is not easy to address, you know. There are important issues we need to bear in mind when it comes to the African continent. In view of the fact that there are human capacity deficits in terms of scientific and administrative capacity to deal with and also issues related to enforcement of the rules, the legal issues, there are budgetary constraints, and law enforcement, including monitoring challenges. And therefore, the tendency has always been to focus on what is easier to deal with or to solve. Indeed, within the broader African context, plastics are just one of the many issues, again, of pollution. I've already mentioned the fact that there are many priorities the countries really want to focus on. But within the context of pollution, you know, it's just one of the issues that we may want to talk about. You know, pollution confronts the continent, and there are many forms of it. There are pollution arising from agricultural farms or setups, minerals mining, particularly those that have become problematic are those dealing with illegal artisanal small-scale mining. Municipal and residential waste all enter African oceans. I wish to focus, however, on plastics because it's revolutionary increasing in trends over the past decades, at least over the past 3 decades, which is inimical to sustainable food security, particularly fisheries, and impacts also biodiversity and wildlife. In certain circles, plastics have been regarded as a silent catastrophe. Plastics in the ocean also limits ocean rights. It limits ocean justice. It neglects, it impacts human health with many ecological and socioeconomic ramifications due to its immediate and long-term effects, especially on Africa's blue economy. We all know blue economy is a very important emerging issue. Within the African Union, the Union has estimated that currently, as of last year, blue economy generated nearly $300 billion for the continent, creating about 49 million jobs in the process. These are very crucial benefits, and you can agree with me that issues of food security, livelihoods, biodiversity are all issues that support the blue economy. All these, be it food security, livelihoods, and biodiversity, are entirely dependent on oceans' health. Given the revolutionary nature and trends of the problems of plastics in the ocean, I believe, or we believe, that science alone cannot solve the problem. And I would just want to show you, these are things that most of you know already. You know, the sources of marine litter or even plastics do not come just from the ocean. It comes from the land as well. Most of it, nearly 50%, come from land. And of course, from other areas. So the plastics we're talking about comes in various ways. So there's the microplastics, and then of course, eventually when they are broken down in the ocean, they become microplastics. Given the revolutionary nature and trends of the problems of plastic in the ocean, I've already alluded to the fact that science alone cannot resolve the issue. We must look at a multi-level and multi-stakeholder approaches all occurring in concert to be able to address the issue, involving not just science. We need to also engage community knowledge, you know, policy and development actors. Please permit me to highlight some of the frightening scenes and impacts of marine plastic pollution on Africa's oceans and other confounding issues. So here you can see some of the entanglements Marine animals often get entangled in macroplastics, making them difficult for them to move or eat. And these are usually very deadly. So these are some other. For those that do not get entangled, they get ingested. Once they ingest them, it becomes an issue, especially for jellies, small fish, or krills. Organisms such as planktons are the first to ingest them, and so it becomes a big issue. Once they are in the stomachs, the pieces can build up and cause blockages and eventually kill them. And these could also bioaccumulate over time. And once it gets into the food chain, it gets to us. So it's really a big issue. So you see the case in Africa. It has some socioeconomic impact as well. More often than not, in these days, particularly in West Africa, we are seeing the issues, the impact of declining pelagic fish stocks. And what that means is that with the upsurge of plastics in the sea, fishes are catching more plastics than fish. There are some issues that we need to discuss within this context. There are problems of fragmented and incomplete legislations pertaining to plastics, and here there are missing specific regulations targeting marine plastics. And this is really an issue within the context of Africa. We therefore need comprehensive solutions to address that. Secondly, is the challenge of implementation and enforcement, and the resource constraints and weak institutional capacity and inadequate monitoring and reporting mechanisms are some of the issues that we deal with. And all these challenges impair or hamper progress in marine litter management. There is also the challenge of the evolving nature of the problem. The increasing volume and diversity of plastics in the environment, is an issue to deal with. The fourth area that I want to touch on has to do with the gaps in international cooperation. We all know that marine litter plastics is a transboundary issue, and certainly we do not have adequate international cooperation, particularly dealing with data sharing, capacity building, harmonizing, and of course harmonizing national regulations. These are all issues that are some of the challenges that are faced on the continent. And lastly, pertaining to the challenges, is the issue of inabilities to address the root causes. Root causes such as unsustainable production and consumption patterns, we all know that, which require broader approach. So under the root causes, there's the need for us to also integrate policies that promote waste reduction, circular economy principles, and extended producer responsibility. So just to highlight the issues of macroplastics and microplastics, and some of the scenes that you see on our beaches. You go to a beach in the west coast of Africa, in some countries, including mine, you see the beach all littered, and these are washed from the sea, and in some cases also from land. It's certainly difficult to say where it's coming from unless you engage in some studies. Now, we need to look at this data, which I really want to share with you. The top 10 countries that dump most plastics into the ocean. Overall, in 2020, these 10 countries dumped nearly 330 million kilograms of plastics into the ocean. Top among them are mostly the Asian countries involving India, China, Indonesia. And of course, it's interesting to note that apart from Egypt, you do not see any African country. And of course, Egypt is a North American country. So this is really a cause, North African country. So this is really an issue for us to think about, you know. Ranking of African countries based on amount of plastic imports and consumption. You again see that, you know, Egypt tops the list, you know, followed by Nigeria, South Africa, you know, Algeria, so on and so forth. And it is instructive to know that, again, if you look at those countries in terms of per capita GDP, these countries are economically doing well. You know, we could call them the middle class countries in Africa. So there is really, you can see already there is some correlation between economic development or economic growth within the continent with the use of plastics. But then I want to use this opportunity to talk about Ghana, my own country. The use of plastics is quite pervasive. Currently, the country is experiencing a plastic menace with almost everything, including food and non-food items, being packaged in plastic without any elaborate plan in operation to deal with the waste generated after products have been used. It's unclear how tax incentives for supporting waste management efforts in the form of environmental tax imposed on plastic product producers has been effective in the management of plastic waste. The stakeholders that deal with the plastics are therefore of the view that recycling could be the best to effectively deal with the problem, particularly the polythene terephthalate PET bottles. Many articles, including media publications, have highlighted the challenges that confront the fishing industry, and I wish to cite one that was published by the American Embassy last year, you know, which sought to indicate that there would be more plastics than fish in our waters by the year 2050. The US Embassy has stated that about 82% of Ghana's plastics waste could be recovered and recycled with existing technologies into value-added products valued at 2 billion cedis per year, creating 5 million jobs within the economy. It is noted that less than 2% of 3,000 tons of plastic waste generated in Ghana every day are recycled. Again, more than 250,000 tons, or 23,000, of all plastic waste generated in a year in Ghana are expected to flow into the Atlantic Ocean. So that it's estimated that by the year 2050, there will be more plastics than fish in the ocean by weight. And certainly, this is a problem, not just for Ghana, but also for the entire continent. I took the data from the publication and did some further work on this, and you could see that among the top 6 countries with highest import and use of plastics, it shows clearly that even with the current situation, it's also projected that by the year 2030, the plastic situation is going to go up, obviously, for the reasons that I've already alluded to: increasing population, increasing middle class, and of course, taste and pervasive use of plastic for various industrial, residential, and even research. If you go to the markets, plastics are used everywhere in wrapping vegetables, in wrapping food, packaging, all sorts of materials, including textiles and so on. So it's certainly an issue to grapple with. I wish to also show you that certainly the drivers, as you can see from the graphic, is as a result of growth in population. And again, if you compare that on what you see on the graph, Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, all alludes to the fact that we certainly do have a crisis on the continent in relation to the population growth, which has been one of the major drivers of the plastic pollution menace. But the situation is not that grim as it may seem. There are very good examples, and so permit me to just highlight a case study from Côte d'Ivoire, which is a Francophone country neighboring Ghana, also in West Africa. That country has one of the fastest growing economies on the continent. The plastics industry employs approximately 10,000 people in over 40 companies and supports up to 20 informal jobs, according to the United Nations Environment Program. It supported this. This was way back some 10 years ago. Now, we also know that while inexpensive, they often wind up littering landscapes, as we all know. University campuses, sports stadiums, streets in cities, you know, everywhere you go, you find them littered. In Abidjan, which is the capital city alone, 10 years ago, produced over 280 tons of plastic waste in a day, a haul that weighs as much as 3 fully loaded passenger jets. This single-use plastic the use of single-use plastics had taken a major toll on the environment. Indeed, less than 10% of the waste that generated, about 20,000 tons, are collected for recycling. The remaining 90%, you and I can have a good guess in terms of where they end up. Indeed, plastic waste was not only a scar on the beauty of its forested and beautiful coastal country, you know, but it's also really impaired the beautiful living conditions within that country. In 2013, just about, in 2013, the government decided to act. It declared a ban on the importation, production, and use of and sale of non-biodegradable plastic bags. Polluters can face up to 6 months of imprisonment and up to 1 million CFA francs, which estimates to roughly about $1,600 in fines. Only few exemptions were made despite reported pressures from investors and traders. A couple of months ago, I visited Abidjan, about 6 months ago, and it was indeed very beautiful to see that single-use plastics that were once purported to be provided in pharmacies, bakeries, gas stations, big supermarkets, have all been replaced with paper bags and reusable bags. And this is happening on the continent, which is something that we should applaud. But then again, within the region, you know, Africa, the continent has about 54 countries. You know, 34 of these are coastal. But within the region, again, some countries have not really followed these very good examples. You know, about 30 of those countries have banned plastics, but others have not. The reason why we should be concerned and to have a global approach is that the globe, as we know, historically has 5 oceans. You know, we do have the Pacific Ocean, You know, we do have the Pacific Ocean and others, but you know, these oceans are not separate bodies of water. They are connected or interconnected. We have the Pacific, Atlantic Pacific, yeah. You know, we have the Indian, you know, so you see that these are simply continuous water bodies, you know, which are not separated. All in all, constituting 71% of our planet, you know. And so the question that we should be asking ourselves is that why are we calling it the earth we live on, the planet we live on? You know, why don't we call it the ocean? You know, because if the bigger portion of the earth or the globe that we live on is water, why are we calling it? So I think this is also part of I perceive part of the problem, why we seem not to pay attention. So, therefore, the question remains, you know, why we need a global approach or even a regional approach to the menace. You know, our seas are connected or interconnected. There's a need for a global framework, a global approach to deal with the problem because whatever that is happening in Canada in terms of the way we manage waste, or the way you manage waste, or the way Africans are managing waste, eventually can end up, you know, at your doorsteps. So it's very important to really think about this. Given the revolutionary nature of the problem, I do not, as I said, proffer ultimate solution, but I think we need to reflect over some revolutionary responses, you know, in terms of approaching this issue from a multifaceted manner. So this is just to give you a perspective of what I just said. So ocean gyres, there are 5 of them in the ocean. Ocean gyres, for those of you who have a background in oceanography, these are very strong currents that are driven also under the ocean, depending on the temperature under the ocean and other factors. They are able to circulate and turn whatever debris or plastics around. So it can certainly be moved around. The issue of plastics needs to be tackled in that manner, and I wish to propose 5 key revolutionary steps, which I think we need to be thinking about. The first that we need to look at, particularly for the continent, is knowledge revolution. Knowledge revolution. In the golden age of industrial society, with its voracious and unequal use of earth resources that are reaching its limits, we are on a new path of economic growth on the continent, driven by all sorts of challenges and opportunities, which are replacing resource-intensive patterns of resource use and exploitation. Africa, therefore, the globe, the world must envision a society that is more innovative to use knowledge and data for decision-making in the use of ocean resources. A new society that is centered on human capital development, you know, that offers a prospect for substantial socioeconomic progress without damaging the marine ecosystems that support life on Earth. So we need to invest heavily in education, particularly in the ocean sciences, marine biology, marine conservation topics are very important. In our part of the world, in Africa, the issues of studying, the opportunities are there, even though in some cases are limited for students to enroll in these programs. But because the whole sector has been associated with poverty, students are not willing, or individuals are not willing to study. For instance, studying fisheries in Ghana is perceived that when you go to study fishery science, you come out as you graduate as a graduate fisherman. So students are not willing to study. But we need to sensitize people and build the needed knowledge. We need a knowledge revolution at various scales. The knowledge revolution also means transfer of knowledge from the developed and developing countries, providing opportunities for knowledge sharing, creating platforms for research and cooperation, research and development on issues on plastics is very important to look at. The second area that I wish to also touch on is the issue of policy revolution. We need to restore public and international confidence through policy implementation, enact policies and laws in relevant areas. I have also noticed, and I believe many of you have also noticed, the failure of international community to respond to the issues of environmental degradation in Africa. I cite the example of Ramsar sites on the continent. In Ghana, there are 6 Ramsar sites. Many of them have been degraded due to urban sprawl and other, land tenure-related issues. It's surprising to know that if you go to the website, you still see those Ramsar sites. Some of them have literally disappeared. But it's surprising to notice that the international community tends to put a blind eye to some of the issues confronting the continent. We can cite many examples, the impact of distant water fleets on artisanal fish stocks, the issues of plastics is one of them, issues of climate change, and many others that can be mentioned in that regard. And so therefore, use of concepts, still coming back to the issue of the Ramsar Convention as an example, the wise use is one of these gray kind of words or areas that makes it very difficult to really underpin policy definition. It makes it really very boring and ineffective. We need to also domesticate some of the global environmental instruments and align them to national policies, which is very key. And to this, I speak to many African governments that we go to sign many of these international agreements, but often domesticating them within the national laws becomes an issue. Part of the problem is structural, because for countries like West African Anglophone countries, they follow more of a dualist parliamentary system. The issues would have to be discussed, debated, and if it's not agreed on, it does not then get into the national laws. It makes it very difficult to really imbibe some of the agreements or resolutions that have been passed internationally. So this is one issue that we need to deal with. I believe this is not really a problem in your countries. We need some monolith approaches where laws that we have gone to sign are easily domesticated and more so aligned. And this also goes to the regional instruments that we have acceded to at the African Union level. The third area that I wish to touch on is the issue of advocacy revolution. We need to rekindle a global conversation on citizen science. It's the main benefit of involving citizens in science activities, the fact that people become more aware, directly involved, and concerned. By this, people can see the easier way to engage is less costly, efficient ways to solve, and an efficient way to solve issues. We also need to look at social and behavior change communication strategies. I advocate that because it provides an avenue for interaction to be enhanced with people and within communities to develop more tailored messages and understanding using a variety of communication channels, to develop positive behaviors, promote and sustain individual, community, and societal behavior change, and maintain appropriate behaviors. And this is very, very important for us to look at. We also need to consider revolutions across partnerships, revolutionary partnerships. You know, we need to formal partnerships bound by actions and rules of engagement. And what that means is that partnerships that help to co-design, co-create, and co-implement activities. Partnerships are bound by actions of any member of the partnership, and therefore, so long as it's within the purview or within the perimeter of the agreement, it makes operations at the local, regional, international level go very well. And this, I'm proposing, we need to strengthen academia, industry, civil society, and policy linkages. It's extremely important. More often than not, as academics, the researches that we do remains on the shelves. And on the continent of Africa, the linkages between industry, academia, or research has very little funding, even from within the national governments. And so there's a disconnect between research and industry. We need to step up activities with civil society, and that is one thing that my center tries to bridge in terms of we're promoting the concept of transformative research, where we bring academia, industry, civil society, policymakers, development partners to the table. We've been doing this over the last 10 years. It has resulted in significant policy changes in Ghana. The fisheries close season is one of such outcomes of fisheries close season in Ghana is one of such outcomes, particularly for small pelagic fisheries, due to some of these engagements. And in November, we had this Africa Blue Economy Initiatives conference that brought together about 250 practitioners and policymakers and many other institutions, development partners across. In fact, I was happy to see Pratib, Bruce, and other colleagues from, Derek and other colleagues from across Africa at that conference. So we need to, as academics, we need to also look at promoting some of these conferences, not just a conference where we meet each other as scientists or as academics and discuss, but we bring in practitioners, you know, the resource users also around the table to discuss. The last that I want to talk about is the issue of generational revolution. You may want to call it intergenerational equity in terms of information sharing and knowledge sharing. And I'm happy that on Thursday, I will be speaking on this topic also with high school students. You know, we need to envision human communities as a partnership among all generations, even those yet unborn. And therefore, we need to involve the young ones, the youth. It's something that we have neglected to a large extent. Because each generation has a right to inherit the same diversity and opportunities that our natural resources and cultural assets bring, you know, or that we enjoy. We should not forget that these are handed over to us, particularly the oceans, by previous generations, and therefore equitable access to the use and benefits of these resources are very important. So what we have been trying to do at my center in the last 10 years is that we have been able to build a very, let me put it, a platform that from humble beginnings we've been able to move into a position of a center of excellence. So 10 years ago, as a seafront university, we conceived the idea to be able to set up a center that will be in the forefront of policy advocacy, promote transformative research, because at the time, we didn't have a department of fisheries and aquatic sciences. What we felt was that the department, given the challenges that it faced in terms of student numbers not coming, the university even had called for the closure of that department. We felt that there was the need to work with stakeholders and change the narrative. So what we did was to propose for the establishment of a Center for Coastal Management in ways that its mandate and activities will be complementary to the department. So in order not for it to compete. And over time, we were able to, in fact, the university indicated that, well, there are no resources to establish such a center, but then we can provide those of you who are drafting this idea a space. And we said, yeah, so we accepted it. We did a proposal. It was granted. And then what we then did was to embark on an ambitious program of grantsmanship. Within the first year, we were able to secure a grant of $5.5 million from USAID, which helped us to operationalize our activities in there. And then we've been going on and on and on. Currently, we have more than 20 international partners. The list continues to grow. In terms of, we partner with development agencies, we partner with universities, but specifically for universities, we do more strategic partnership. We partner more with development institutions, not also because of the funding, but also we want to also look at it more from the perspective of R&D, and then, of course, with policymakers and all the other partners. So currently, we have students from 17 African countries and researching in various topics on oceanography, in the blue economy, on fisheries science, integrated coastal management, ocean governance, marine. So the topic goes on. And we have also recruited more than 90 master students. We have sought for international accreditation for most of our programs. And of course, central to this is that we have a very strong marine plastic group. And I'll be sharing with you some of the project activities that we've been engaged in over the years. I'm happy that the V2V program has also been very instrumental in helping us contribute to the needed resilience over the last 4 years. We've been working in communities in Ghana, trying to better their lot in terms of providing them with decisions that supports their livelihoods. So part of the other things that we do, collaborating with, we collaborate with UBC. I believe you may know Rashid Sumaila and Daniel Pauly. They won the Environment Prize last year, the Tyler Prize. They have donated significant parts of their work, their resource, to a program they call the Africa UBC Oceans and Fisheries Visiting Fellows Program, which is seeking to engage young African researchers to build international networks. And within this context, we're also focusing on addressing the issues of marine plastics, where we have the opportunity to engage on research in their labs and all that. But then again, the Ocean Country Partnership Program, which is a UK government initiative, is also assisting us to set up a microplastic lab, within the University of Cape Coast. Within the next 6 months, we're going to have that. And what that means is that we will be in a position to do a lot more research and bringing in students from across Africa. One of the reasons why we very much like that initiative is that the fact that, once you bring in students from the region, the chances of they also remaining on the continent to work is high. And we have tried to provide them with scholarships, through the funding opportunities that we get from the projects, to engage in various activities in research around the issues that we're looking at. Yeah, so these are just some of our activities, our research works that we've done. That's our building in Ghana, at the University of Cape Coast. We've done various researches that have been published in high-impact journals as a contribution to the policy development. We've done work focused on pollution fingerprinting of estuaries in the country, and of course, achieving sustainable resource reduction of marine litter for ocean conservation in West Africa. This is a project with the Blue Planet Fund in Liberia and many others. The other thing that we've tried to do has to, I spoke about revolutionary partnerships, engaging in networks. So we are within the network of the Global Partnership on Marine Litter, and by extension also the Global Ocean Accounting Partnerships that are providing us with the resources and capacity to support research and policy research that targets policy development and policy formulation. The Ocean Country Partnership Program is in partnership with us, and what we're doing is that we have developed a manual to promote short courses, to the running of short courses on marine litter management within the region, and also to come up with a standard protocol that makes sure that whatever researches that are being conducted within the region, particularly for West Africa, are comparable. More often than not, these data protocols are missing. So once we are able to have standard protocols across the region and through the conferences and initiatives, that workshops and other initiatives, we are able to engage with the practitioners so that we have these standard protocols for data collection, which in the end also assists in the monitoring of marine litter on the beaches. So there are quite a number of other partnerships we are involved in within the country and on the continent, which are assisting greatly. So we have the Nippon Foundation Ocean Litter Project, where we have assessed human dependency on plastics and perceived impacts on plastics on human living. I did mention about this study that we conducted in Liberia, which was commissioned by the Conservation International of Liberia. The key findings in this study pointed out to the fact that municipal waste management is a key issue, and therefore the need for other forms of waste management. We proposed a number of measures to address this problem. Recycling, of course, was key, and of course the other issues had to do with the ban on single-use plastics. Yeah, so many other activities to do with the FAO, Fridge of Nansen. We collect data on plastics, and here you see the fishers. They go for fishing and they catch more plastics than fish. For every 10 kilos, it's been estimated that roughly about 1.5 to 3 kilograms of plastics are found in the catches, which is something that we should be concerned about. Yeah, so these are quite some studies that we've done on beach litter surveys, estimating the quantities on the beaches, and many other to do also with lagoons. Yeah, so quite a bit of work we have done. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that the increase in plastic production has resulted more in plastic waste reduction, and therefore these are impacting the livelihoods, impacting biodiversity, impacting wildlife, and therefore there is the need for us to look at relevant policies that can help address the menace on the continent. I wish to thank you for your attention. Yeah, right, thank you.
Thank you, Denis. That was very informative and a little depressing, I have to add. So I couldn't help but seeing all of you gasp when those pictures came up, particularly of the mass amount of plastic on the beach, but also, honestly, when we saw animals and this marine wildlife. I think the turtle personally stood out as seeing it deformed, its shell very literally deformed, so clearly living in that plastic from a younger age. So I want to ask you, you mentioned this concept of how really it's a lack of education and we need more marketing and social media and attention to this.
Right.
And just looking at, again, the room gasping at that one photo, I mean, why, what do you recommend? What do you think we need to do to shake people to recognize how this plastic is really affecting our coastal regions and certainly marine wildlife?
I think one of the things that I mentioned, which was a key issue that I raised, is to look at revolutionary measures, to address the challenge that we face. I think we need to create awareness through various mechanisms. Awareness is key. Awareness in the sense that we're not just talking about the fact that plastics get into our environment, into our oceans, but more importantly, the extent to which it affects us economically, socioeconomically, and human health impacts, addressing or bringing up some of those issues, using various media outlets, particularly social media also. Because in Africa, we have seen an upsurge in the use of social media, which can be used as a driver to push the issues forward. I've also, in my talk, advocated for some multi-faceted approaches, not just the issues of workshops. Engaging the policymakers, is key, even though that could be a bit tricky, but I think we need to emphasize that more, the top level, and involving also the traditional authority in addressing this problem. Often their involvement has been limiting. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, when I saw that picture, I couldn't help but think about how we have, on cigarettes, there's all these warning labels and pictures of what your lungs could look like and what teeth could look like after smoking. We need that kind of picture of the turtle on all the single-use plastics out there, right? To start to make us recognize that this is where this is going. And we're not even, of course, talking about or even recognizing the great amount of land use dumping that you'd mentioned as well. Let me ask you, as a university that's really very interested in technology, what role do you think technology plays in potentially mitigating this or in really understanding the threat to the aquatic ecosystems?
Well, when it comes to plastics, I think that technology should maybe focus more in terms of alternatives, that can be used. In the absence of plastic, we are advocating for revolutionary measures that can reduce but it seems there's not an end in sight because of the relevance of plastic. We use it in our daily lives, at home, at work, and many other places. So I think technology should focus on looking for alternative uses, and even where there isn't that opportunity, maybe we also look at the extent to which the consequence of it, in terms of the toxic effects, could be minimized. And of course, also looking at the lifespan, because plastics really remain in aquatic environment for many years, and that could be a problem. So technologies could begin looking at the biodegrading effects of bacteria on plastics and many other edge-cutting lab and scientific studies. Technology could also focus on opportunities to use these plastics in construction, in housing, especially in Africa where there are housing deficits. Because these are huge biomass, you know, and maybe if we can transform them into other marketable or other beneficial uses, I think this could really be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly had an earful for policymakers and how they really need to step up and
Right.
be more proactive on this issue. Why do you think it is so hard to penetrate that argument, to get their attention? Whether it's here, I mean, I think it's not just certainly a challenge in Africa, it's an international challenge.
Yeah, I already alluded in my talk that there are resource constraints. There are resource constraints financially and also human capacity deficiencies, and we should also not lose sight of the fact that the political systems in itself also relies on industry-driven support systems. So sometimes it becomes really very complicated to get policy to do what you think is the right thing, and the fact that there are other competing interests. So this is really a problem, and that is why I'm advocating for multifaceted approaches, you know, backed by sound science through international cooperation to really get policymakers to listen. You know, conferences that brings all these stakeholders together. Of course, with the conference we had in Ghana, the vice president was there. You know, and once the vice president is there, most of these government agency people are there. And at the end of it all, you're bringing out a communique, which is agreed on by all the stakeholders who are there. So at the end of the day, this communique will then be pushed through the relevant agencies and followed up. So these are some ways that I think we can get the policymakers to listen. Academia cannot do it alone. Development partners cannot do it alone, you know, and civil society or communities can also not do it alone. We need a concerted approach at various levels of engagement.
And what would you say about bringing in traditional knowledge? You know, whether it's from cultural perspectives or traditional knowledge to contribute to better understanding and addressing marine environmental issues?
Yeah, within coastal communities, you know, more often than not, people refer to them as, oh, these are uneducated people. But I often correct my students and those that I've heard say that we are rather uneducated in their context. There are significant knowledge gaps that we have even as scientists when you meet with coastal and fishing communities. They have lived there, you know, this is a traditional activity. They've lived there for many years. They know the seasons of the fish. They know when the fish spawn, you know, and many other cultural assets within the industry which are known to them, which, you know, we as scientists do not know. And of course, there are certain cultural practices, traditional practices. For instance, ban on fishing. There are specific days that fishing is not done. In Ghana, in some communities, on Tuesdays, you do not fish. And these are all traditional conservation measures that allows the stocks to rest over a period of time, and then they are allowed to spawn. And issues of close season, these have been traditionally practiced, you know. And it's important to revisit those traditional norms and beliefs. And it should, from my perspective, we can be successful in that approach only if there's the policy recognition of traditional authority, which often is the biggest gap. Traditional authority is not represented within the policy framework, and that is something that we need to revisit.
Yeah, definitely. you talked about the international community, being an important part of the solution, the multifaceted part of this. But can you elaborate on what can the international community do to collaborate on? I mean, do you see it as an opportunity for investing in more research? Is it in more raising awareness and advocacy? Where do you see the best investment of international attention to this?
Is it in relation to Africa? Is the question in relation to Africa? Yeah, obviously, I would, not because I'm an academic, but obviously information, decision-making are best made on science, best available science. And so I would strongly advocate for support for research and capacity development on the continent when it comes to R&D. Of course, significant investment should also be made into policy formulation, because where there are no policies, it makes it very difficult, even with the smartest of ideas and resources. You cannot do anything. I cite the example of mangroves. In West Africa, there are hardly any laws on mangrove conservation. So these are typical examples of how we see the degradation of some of these marine plants. So investment should go into policy formulation, investment should go into science, and investment should also go into some kind of support for coastal communities in terms of how they get involved in conservation activities.
Yeah, and I think also in this climate where many of us in the academic sector feel like people aren't recognizing the value of this research and investment into research, yet we know very much that there's lots of fantastic cases of where this research has materialized. I'd love if you don't mind, just for the benefit of our audience, giving us a great story or an example of how this investment into your research resulted in material benefit to local communities.
Okay. So one of the things we've been exploring, particularly when it comes to livelihoods, is the potential for women shellfishers in coastal communities to benefit from that resource. So in 11 countries in West Africa, we've been very active, particularly 2 of them, in the Gambia and in Ghana, where women have been given some sort of training to really manage that resource, preventing pollution within that lagoonal ecosystems. And we started by helping them to form associations and educating them on the essence of good hygiene practices within the fisheries, and also providing them with the training in water quality management. Because, when it comes to oysters, Crassostrea tulipa, that's the scientific name, mangrove oysters, the water quality must be good. So the community had to be sensitized not to pollute the water and engage in continuous beach cleaning and beach monitoring activities. And significantly, we've been able to establish some vibrant community projects in 2 sites in Ghana, in Densu and also in Nakwa, western eastern part, and of course in the Gambia. And so these are some evolving activities where science is being used to promote the lot of coastal communities, particularly involving women. It's one of the significant actions I would like to point to. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really important. Women play a very important role as often the dominant consumer in many of these countries, and also certainly often still being the bearer of raising their children and teaching them about the great things that come from the ocean. So really important advocacy tool as well in the long run. Thank you. Well, I wanted to just first, before just turning the page here as I get my notes, sorry, is not just to thank you, of course, for raising awareness for us, because I think many of us are still very much trying to grapple with this. We're a country that has lots of coastal regions, but of course here in Waterloo, this is very abstract to us, so really bringing this to light. I want to thank everybody here for coming, and for those virtually, we have had a great turnout as well online. I want to thank TD for their 40-year partnership. And of course, as we navigate the challenges facing our oceans, and collaborations with organizations like TD are crucial in driving research innovation for a healthier ocean. I want to bring you to your attention that also on Thursday, there will be more than 450 high school students in this room learning from Dr. Aheto as a result of TD's generosity and partnership. So really investing in the future and ensuring that many of our young people know about all of this great work that you're doing. And together we can harness the power of science and sustainable practices to ensure that our oceans are free of debris and remain a vital resource for our global economy. Let's work hand in hand to make that vision a cleaner, more sustainable ocean a reality for generations to come. So on that note, I want to thank you, Dr. Aheto. Also, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Drs. Prateep Nanyak and Derek Armitage, for their leadership. I'd like to thank Jinawaki, our staff lead, and the Environmental Office's Advancement, Miriam, for coordinating tonight's event. Thank you very much.